Welcome to the Agent of Wealth podcast with Mark Bautis from Bautis Financial. In this podcast, Mark helps guide you towards financial freedom, ensure you never run out of money, and create a balance in life that prioritizes what is most important to you. Join us for this journey as Mark draws from years of expertise and guest experts to solve the multiple wealth building challenges involved in your financial life.
Welcome back to the Agent of Wealth podcast. This is your co-host, John Williams, and today I'm joined by Raymond Levine, an extended care benefits advisor and founder of Lavine Long-Term Care Benefits. Now, Raymond advises and designs long-term care benefits for families and businesses to help them prepare for the financial and emotional realities of caregiving. He's the co-author of the best-selling book, Empathy and Understanding in Business, and is the host of Planning with Purpose and the Caregiver's Blueprint. What sets Raymond apart is that his professional work is deeply rooted in a personal experience. His perspective on long-term care was shaped by watching his own parents navigate the challenges of caregiving, giving a firsthand insight into how care decisions impact families, careers, and legacies. Raymond, welcome to the show.
It's an honor to be on your podcast, John. Good morning.
Yeah, I'm really excited for today's conversation. Like we were speaking before we got started here, and I was telling you how this is a topic of curiosity with a lot of our clients. But I think there's a lot of misconceptions and a lot to be learned. But I also don't want to assume that many of our listeners even understand what long-term care is at the highest level. So maybe give us just some idea and give our listeners an idea of what long-term care is at the simplest sense.
Long-term care, by definition, usually means that you need caregiving, whether you have a frailty, whether you have cognitive issues, whether you have an accident, whether you have an illness, that usually is 90 days or more. And by definition, it means that whether you're at home or in a care center, that you need family, friends, spouse, or a licensed caregiver to help you with what they call daily activities, eating, bathing, dressing, continence, some of the basic, but it goes on more than that. But that's the definition of what long-term care means to most people. Or if you don't, it's caregiving, but you need it for a longer period of time. It isn't a cold or the flu. It's you have some issue that you're going to need care for longer than 90 days.
Okay, so a lot of times when we think of this, we think of older folks. It's not always that way, right? Obviously, these things can happen early, but typically we think of maybe a family member we've known or somebody, and we'll go into that a little bit later. So let's say where somebody here is like, okay, we can't take care of ourselves. At this point, we've decided, okay, we're going to need long-term care for whatever reason it is. What are our choices? Like, what are the different types of care from that point?
If you own a plan, then what you need is what's called two of the 6 daily activities, including cognitive. And this is where a lot of people, whether you own a plan or you don't own a plan, you've heard of a plan and say, well, they didn't approve the claim, is that long-term care benefits, there are a variety of qualifications. The first is that you have to have 2 out of the 6 qualifications of eating, bathing, dressing, continence, and cognitive. One of those issues it's not that you have a health issue. It's what has happened to you with the health. If you've had a stroke, a heart attack, an accident, you have surgery, is how long will it take you to recover, if you ever recover, from this issue? That's when caregiving benefits will come into effect. And it would be the same whether you do it for Medicare, depending on the benefits, or even Medicaid. There's a time period, and usually the time period is usually 90 days. But I want to emphasize, it's not your health issue. That's what your health insurance and Medicare do. It's what kind of health issue have you had where you're going to be required to have longer terms of care services.
So in practice, what does that look like? I mean, because I know a lot of times when we think of long-term care, maybe we think of like assisted living facilities. And what are the different options when it comes to like physically, where do you go? Or
when long-term care insurance first began, you could call it, care, nursing home insurance. That's how it first was designed. And so you said nursing home. So that's became sort of the template, nursing home. Well, in time, it's evolved where it's comprehensive. Comprehensive means that most plans that you own will be either in your home, where most people want to be, or depending on the circumstances, that you want to be in a good quality care facility. And there are three levels. There's assisted, where you need care, but there are a lot of things you can still do yourself. There's nursing home, where you need more care services, again depending on what your health issues are, or that you're in a cognitive unit where you have a severe form of cognitive. Now, most people think of it as Alzheimer's, but it may not, it may be some other cognitive issue. So it depends on, what your health issue is. But I'll return to, most people want to be in their home. And if they have enough, a family, friends, or that you can pay for a licensed care person that has expertise and experience that maybe your family doesn't have, that's usually, the best situation.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I can see how it's tough. You lived in a home typically for a really, really long time, and you'd like to make it work there. So I guess what you're talking about is like a form of, depending on what the person, their care needs are, potentially staying in their home and having the care come to you.
Well, here's the reality, John, and I'll just give you, the personal reality of this. Most people want to stay at home if you have, sufficient staff. But if you just have a spouse or partner and say, we're going to do this together, it may work for a while. But if it goes on and on, the economic issues, the mental issues, the stress issues can become, overwhelming. And again, depends on the kind of care that you need. And, my personal experience, my mother had the resources, both in long-term care plan, but just her own personal resources. She had vast economic resources that she could stay at home and have 24-hour care. And it was wonderful. She lived in West Los Angeles in a nice condo. It was a wonderful environment. Before you die, you still want to live as good a life as you can. And if you have your finances set up, if you have a care plan, you can still live a very good life. You can still go out and do things if you have people that will help you prepare for the day, and that you're bathed and you're clothed and you're fed and the house is clean. You can go out and do many things. You can even travel if you have people to help you. It's about the care support.
Okay. I wanted to shift gears here to lay some groundwork with government provided services. And many times I'll be talking with clients and they'll say, oh, Medicare will take care of that. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions as to what Medicare does cover. People are typically very surprised as to how little that Medicare program covers with regards to long-term care, but also where the rubber meets the road when it comes to Medicare and potentially Medicaid. I thought it might be nice for you to kind of speak a little bit as to what that looks like, what to consider when it comes to those government programs.
Social services is wonderful, and a lot of people. And I happen to be an advocate of that, because not everybody is going to have the resources to pay for care. And those that are fortunate, great. But for many, they need social services. Now, Medicare, that came into effect in 1965, was to pay for health care for Americans 65 and older. Of course, it's expanded, and also Medicaid was also part of it. And so it's evolved where older people could have access to health care, but also to have it paid for once you left, your company. Most people before 1965 would have health care from their company plans. But beyond that, Americans just didn't have health care beyond that. And social services has evolved where maybe you can get the social services you want, maybe you can't. Maybe you qualify, but you're not entitled because it's based on your economic resources. And Americans don't like to have somebody else tell them what to do. And so if you have the resources, you build up the resources through a wealth advisor, financial planner, and you have a good quality care plan, you'll be in pretty good shape to stay at home, or if you need to go to a care center. If for some reason you don't have the funds, then you apply for Medicaid. And again, you might be eligible, but you've got to qualify financially. Or if you have assets, then you want to go to an elder care attorney and pay $15,000 to transfer your assets. Maybe that's a good way to do it. But that's a financial and economic choice. Do you want to do it where you have a plan through a wealth advised financial plan, or you have a caregiving plan, or do you go to an elder care attorney, transfer your assets, and then depend on the mercies of Medicaid?
It's my understanding that you can get about 100 days out of Medicare, and it's not necessarily assisted living or long-term care.
That's if you're in a care facility. It's actually 10 days that Medicare will pay. You're in a rehabilitation center, it will pay for 10 days. Then it will pay up to 100 days. It'll pay a portion. If you own a care plan, it'll pay the difference, or you just have to pay it out of your own resources. And right after that, then it's a full bill for the individual.
Okay, and so our listeners have an understanding is, I know it could differ potentially by state, but I know that there's a lot of the states follow the same asset requirements. And when I say asset requirements, I mean what you need to maximum asset requirements to actually qualify for Medicaid.
It's different in each state. Some are more forgiving, some are less. And depending on, the state of the situation, sometimes if you're using Medicaid, they may require that the heirs have to reimburse, and there have been situations. How often it happens, that's not an area that I don't know. I have read that can happen.
A lot of our clients are in the New Jersey area. The number 2,000 sticks out to me as being like you can't have anything more than 2,000 in your name to even have the conversation. So you're really, the key here is you're really spending down your assets to like pretty much nothing.
You are, but I mean, it's by ratios. And, when I take the CE courses, it really gets complicated of, your home, if you own life insurance, you have an annuity. Some things might be exempt. So when we say 2,000, I mean, there are exemptions to it. Your home, if you have a qualified annuity, if you have life insurance, there's certain things that are exempted. And then, of course, it becomes complicated for Social Security and also your wife, or if you have, the second, third, fourth marriage relationship. So it's more nuanced than that.
And I think the key here is just so the listeners understand that, like, depending on your situation, but the idea there is you're spending down your assets to a level that, is acceptable to the state where they're going to start to provide for you. I just want to contrast that with the idea of having a plan and having abundance and being able to pay for it. Yeah, Medicaid could be your option, but before we shift gears here, I just want to kind of lay a groundwork there and so people understand the difference between the two. And then now we have an idea of, let's say we have assisted living when it comes to care. Maybe there's potential in-home care. Obviously we're on Medicare, and we now know what that could potentially provide. And then there's Medicaid, which is kind of almost like a backdrop, or, depending on your situation and you didn't plan, could be a potential outcome. With that said, now what I'd like to kind of shift gears to is and talk a little bit about what does a plan look like, and more specifically, long-term care insurance and at a high level.
There are three things when I talk to any potential buyer. There are three things. The first is, what do you want your plan to do? What do you want your caregiving plan to do? And that also goes into, and this becomes, fact finding, just like, for your doctor, you go to a wealth advisor, financial plan, you do a fact finding and you find out, their lifestyle, have they had a caregiving issue previously? Have they been advised to have a caregiving plan? Of which then, we'll work with the financial planner, wealth advisor in order to know, what are your assets? What's your cash flow? What's your ability, what would you be willing to pay in premium? The second is, how old are you? Because the older you get, the expiration and the warning lights are more apparent. So you're always better off to get a long-term care plan as young as you can, and you can also stack them. What I mean by stack is you can add to it incrementally. But think of it this way: you're not going to wait at age 64 if you want to retire at 65 to do your retirement plan. You want to do it as early as possible. It gives your plan time to grow, so that it could be a good pot of money and give you a number of years for your care plan. So it's your age. And this is the big one, is the health assessment. What's your health situation? the better the health that you are, and you don't need to be in perfect health. You don't need to be, but it needs to be good enough. Now, if you have certain pre-existing, if you have a neurological, or if you're on the onset of, cognitive, I can still get you a plan. We'll have to talk about it then with a financial advisor, how to do it. But it can be done even if you have no health. It can be done. So those are the three things that I look at. I'll also say maybe you'll ask, maybe you won't, but I'll get ahead of myself, is that people say, oh, I don't want to spend that much in premium. And my response to that is, well, it's sort of like with your homeowner's insurance, your car insurance. You always want, high deductible because your premiums are less. But then when you need a claim, then you say, oh, I wish I had a lower deductible. But it's a balance. My thing, if you say, well, what is it specific? Maybe 0.5% of your income, or maybe 1%, depending on how long you want it to do. But for $300-400 a month, that's much better. People spend $800-1,000 on their vehicle. Spend a little money on yourself. I promise you, it's worth it.
Well, with that said, maybe you could speak a little bit to statistics and the potential, and just and maybe I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, assuming it doesn't have to be specific statistics, but like
I've been in this business a long time. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, is there anything you could lend to helping the listeners understand what the chances are that somebody will need long-term care?
Well, when I first got started in the business, they had 70%. However, where I live in Washington State, I don't know what happened. We've been here over 20 years. That it seems like all I'm around is just old people or older people and mobility issues. Here's my observation. Before you die, unless you die quickly, there is going to be a transition from when you're, in good health and you have mobility to you're going to transition to you need some sort of caregiving. Now, it can be a week, it can be a day, it can be 18 years. My mother needed care for 18 years. And it wasn't cognitive. It was just she broke both her arms, and then eventually it was frailty. But cognitively, she was fine. She was able to go and do things. So, just like for your car or your home insurance or your home, you hope nothing ever happens. However, you cover it because if you need repairs, you have the insurance to do it. Spend money on yourself that if you need caregiving, even if whether it's a short period of time or a long period of time, it's worth it. Now, one of the things, and I'll do this quick. In the early years of long-term care, they have the traditional plan. So they said, use it or lose it. And that was true. I mean, if you didn't use it for a period of time or you felt, well, I wasted my premiums. With hybrid plans, and there are other plans, whether you use it for a short period of time or a longer period of time, whatever it is you don't use could go back to the beneficiary. So you don't lose everything. If you're concerned about, well, if I own this and I can't use all the benefits, what will happen? Hybrid plan, it's designed if you don't use all of the benefits, that will go to your beneficiary. And for good news, there are no taxes to it.
Mm-hmm. Maybe go back on that a little bit more and explain the different types of distinguish between the different types of policies, just so everybody's clear.
When long-term care insurance first began, it was traditional. It's a health insurance plan. And that's how the insurance commissioner looks at it. It's a health insurance plan for caregiving, not for health care, but for caregiving, for caregiving services. It could be either a reimbursement plan or an indemnity plan. Reimbursement means that whether a care center or you hire a licensed caregiver, they're reimbursed by the insurance company, or an indemnity where the cash. If you have 5, 6, 7, 8,000, it would go wired into your bank account, and then you use it either to pay family, friends, or a licensed care services. Of course, if you're in a care center, it doesn't matter which one. It would revert totally to a reimbursement plan. That's how it began. It's now transitioned for a variety of reasons. Where now hybrid plans. Hybrid plan. Basic simplicity is It is a life insurance plan that has an attachment, or they call it a rider, a long-term care plan. So when you need the benefits, the first benefits that you use is the life insurance. And this is where if you don't use all the life insurance benefits, it'll go tax-free to your beneficiary. If you go beyond that, then it goes to long-term care plan. So then you use that, and then when you die, then your plan goes to life insurance heaven. It answers that question. The other thing is that with a hybrid plan, unlike a traditional, premiums are guaranteed never to go up, never. And then then there are others. There's short-term care plans. There's also a plan if you have no health, but you don't need a caregiving service called True Freedom, and it's like a subscription plan, like a Costco or other kind of AAA, other kind of membership plan. So there are a number of plans that can be available to you, and if you have the patience, especially if you have no health or health that's an issue, but you own a life insurance plan, you have a non-qualified annuity, or you have other assets that you can transfer, you can get a plan and you can leverage it, where for every dollar you put in, you get $3-4 back. Even if you have a health issue where you couldn't qualify for others, you can transfer it through a tax-free exchange, and then the benefits come to you non-taxable to pay for your care services. So there's something for everybody in every state. You just have to, either through your wealth advisor or through Raymond or some long-term care person that can explain, your options.
With the insurance itself, obviously covering these services, I think it's probably important for us to take a step back, or at least hit on cost. And I know this is probably not an easy question to answer just at a high level or in general. I can imagine, and I actually know that there's a lot of different levels of care that can be involved, and how much it's going to cost is going to be affected by those levels of care. In a short way and as easy as possible, to kind of give the listeners an idea as to how much it costs, or like what the expectations are there, and even that, like how it's relative to what your normal cost of living would be.
Interesting you asked that question. If you go to my website and you go to the upper left corner of the website, it's a subscription I use through Water Lily. And in that upper left, you can put in your lifestyle information. And don't lie. I mean, if you drink or you do this, but put in your lifestyle information, and it will give you, information of when either you're likely to die or when you might need caregiving. Then it will also then go into, the various, depending on how many years, what it would cost. So I can, give you sort of general ideas, but if you want more specificity or visually, go to the upper left-hand corner of my website, put in that information, and you can visually see, all these options. And then, it'll help you whether you talk to me or you talk to John. And then in the lower right-hand corner, as you go all the way down my website, you can say, how much does long-term care insurance cost? It'll answer a lot of those questions that you have, then have to look through the 46 or 56 frequently asked questions.
Yeah, so we'll put those in the show notes. I think that you hit on the idea of a plan and just kind of understanding what these things are. Obviously, it's a really big, important part. And I imagine the area where you live too is obviously going to be a big factor. But I invite all listeners, and whether reaching out to us or Raymond or looking at these resources, to just know what the potential could be. Because in my experience, people are surprised as to how much it costs. And on the high end, it's typically a lot more expensive than they think. When they're doing this planning in their head, they kind of maybe just brush it off, saying like, okay, well, I'll just pay for it out of my regular cash flow. But, especially if you get to the point where you need 24-hour care, just to give an example, I mean, I've seen people pay upwards of $25,000, $30,000 a month for really, really high-end care. And that's usually it's not usually an unusually large amount of cash flow that would not necessarily be created out of a regular retirement plan. But I do think there's a lot to unpack here, and it'd be a daunting journey for anybody to go down this road trying to figure this stuff out on your own. So, with that said, thanks for all the information, Raymond. Before we close here, where can listeners go to learn more about you, your work at Lavine Long-Term Care Benefits, and get in touch with you directly?
You can go to my website, www.lav, as in Victor, LTCINS.com, Lavine LTCINS.com. You can look me up on the search engines, Raymond Levine. Or if you just want to call me directly, 253-275-6091. I'm in Washington State. I am licensed in other states. And if I'm not in a state where I can do something, talk to John, or I'll give you people to talk to.
Great. Well, and we'll include all your information in the resources section of the show notes for sure. Thanks again, Raymond. And thank you to everyone who tuned in today's episode of Agent of Wealth Podcast.
Don't forget to follow the Agent of Wealth on the platform you listen from and leave us a review of the show. We're currently accepting new clients, and if you'd like to schedule a one-on-one consultation with our advisors, please do so at bautisfinancial.com/call.
Thank you for listening to the Agent of Wealth podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered represents the views and opinions of the guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Bautis Financial. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for professional financial planning and investment advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investments and financial planning.